and welcome to the End in Mind podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin, the owner of Meraki Media Management. The End in Mind is a place where we come to share stories, tips, and strategies of many entrepreneurs, creatives, business owners, and just some people that aren't willing to live the traditional lifestyle. We talk about how to live outside of the box today and how to incorporate what really is important in your life to keep that end goal always in mind. Again, if you would like to reach out to me in any type of way, you can find me on Instagram at Meraki_media_management. And I hope to hear from you all soon. Thanks so much and enjoy our show. Hey everybody, welcome back to The End in Mind. I am your host, Caitlin. I am so excited to have a lovely guest here with me today. Thank you so much for being here, Charmaine. I'm so excited to get to know you more and also share with our guests everything, all the lovely things that you do.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay, of course. Thanks so much for your time. So can you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, how you got into entrepreneurship? I love your story, so I know they will as well.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So hello, everyone. My name is Charmaine. I'm a weight loss coach for women entrepreneurs. And yeah, I never thought in my life I'd ever be an entrepreneur. Kind of crazy. I was actually a registered nurse for 8 years, like a psychiatric nurse in a hospital. So I worked with patients who had depression and bipolar and Alzheimer's, like the whole spectrum of life was who I was working with. So yeah, when I was working as a nurse, basically I realized that one day, it literally just felt like one day I went to the doctor's office and they're like, oh yeah, you're pre-diabetic. And I'm like, oh, what? Excuse me? And I was like healthy. I was a personal trainer. I was working out a lot. I had all the muscles, and yet still I was pre-diabetic. So that really woke me up to looking at what I'm eating and realizing like how much I'm turning to food for so many reasons, like not just to eat, but also to cope with stress, to like for boredom, for entertainment. So that just set me on this whole journey of looking at what I'm using food for, changing my relationship with food, and then ultimately helping other women do the same.
I love it. Oh my gosh. So what was that like? Because here on The End in Mind, like I recently was diagnosed with PTSD. So I talk a lot about what that was like. I'm like, how I didn't even know that I had PTSD. I had no clue that I even had trauma, on some level. So it's a huge blow when you get a diagnosis, and it can sometimes really hurt us in the sense of like starting our journey from scratch, but ends up leading us to more success. At least that's what I believe. So I would love to know like what that was like, when you first got this pre-diagnosis.
Yeah, like it was kind of like what you're saying. It was like shocking. It really does feel like a blow just because I thought to myself I was healthy. That's the thing about data, right? Like tracking your money or tracking your weight or tracking your labs, right? Like the thing about data is that it doesn't lie. It's just this is the measurement of where you're at, and sometimes it's just nice to see what's going on, like when your mind isn't like biased in any way, because I was really biased, like thinking I was good with my eating, but the truth was I was actually eating things that weren't serving my body, that were making me like I was overeating foods that were processed or sugary, and especially when I was stressed, and I had no idea I was doing those things. So it was a big blow, but like you said, when you have that awareness, even if it stings and feels really shocking and it could be really painful in the beginning, like that awareness of where you're at is what will help you have growth and will help you ultimately have less pain down the road. Because especially for you, like having a PTSD diagnosis, that's really shocking. But you having that awareness will help you get the help you need for that. So I'm just grateful I had that awareness, because if not, I don't even know where the heck I'd be with my health. So it was a blessing in a very uncomfortable way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because you were also then prompted to change your lifestyle. And what was that part of the journey like? I know for myself, there's lots of ups and downs, that come with that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, it requires you to change everything that was a comfort to you in some way before. So especially for me, I was using food a lot to cope with stress. So it challenges you to look at life a different way. And to, for me specifically, it was challenging me to handle adversity in a different way, because the when I went to the root of it, when I went to like looking at the workplace and being like, okay, why am I wanting to eat when I'm stressed out? Like it just goes deeper than the food. Like there's more reasons behind it. And for me, I realized like, oh, I'm just wanting to eat to avoid conflicts with staff members. Like that was usually one of the biggest things for me, to avoid having hard conversations with some people. And when I had to eliminate food as the way to escape those conflicts, I just had to learn how to communicate better and how to be a better leader. And that helped transform my leadership skills, and it helps with my business too. So it was very painful, but it was worth it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, totally. I feel like that's how like a lot of us would describe our journey. So like I appreciate your honesty, because even though that's how we all feel, we don't always share, the part of it that is not the easiest, and getting really uncomfortable too, which it sounds like that experience must have been so different for you. It's like, oh, now I'm not going to go here and do what I'm really used to doing and where I like to be, right? Where our brains, our egos, whatever we want to call it, tell us that is our comfortable level. And now going out and having these conversations and like attacking them head first was probably pretty scary. I can only imagine. Yeah.
I had to change like everything. I had to change how I was eating. I had to start cooking because I never cooked before, and it just required me to look at food in a completely different way. Like I started doing other things like eating less sugar, eating no starchy foods, because I had to reverse my my blood sugar levels and stuff, like reverse my prediabetes. So I had to look at food in a different way, just kind of like, oh, actually these certain foods that you think were healthy are actually not quite as healthy. So it was like literally like your whole concept. It's like, imagine if you thought the sky was blue all your life, and then somebody is like, oh no, dude, that's not blue. That's like green. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
No, so it's very discombobulating.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, absolutely. And especially like, which I find just crazy is like you have your background in nursing, like you have your degree in nursing. So I'm sure you're like, hey, I know all of this. Like, this is like what, on some level, what I help my patients with. Like, even though you were dealing with, probably the more brain psychiatric, it sounds like, more than the physical, but it's all connected on some level, right? So I'm sure you were like helping your clients, and then it's like, wait, what's going on? Complete change.
Right. Right. And yeah, it's all connected. Like the psychiatric unit, like everyone has medical issues in the psych unit, and it's all connected in that way. But yeah, it was just really challenging to see how like one perspective, like something that you think is your truth all your life is actually not the truth, because it's like what's actually happening in reality is not what you think it is.
Yeah.
So that was crazy.
No, I like relate to it so much. And I'm sure our listeners do too, because even if they haven't had a diagnosis, it's kind of like they're coming to our show to hear about personal development, what it's really like. And I feel like you perfectly described it. It literally feels like someone's telling you the sky is green, and it has been green your whole life, but you know for a fact that it's blue, right? Like you're trusting in your eyes, the whole thing, and it's completely different. So yeah, I just think that that's a perfect description of what it really is like when you first have that like awareness going into your healing journey, like whatever journey that may be.
Right. Right. That's how I felt too. Like when I started getting into like life coaching and personal development, like I felt like I was literally in this whole world that I was just like, wow, I did not know about anything. Like just the fact that we could manage our thoughts, and we have like more agency over our life than we think. Like other people and our circumstances don't have to determine our results, like things like that. That's how it felt kind of coming into a personal development journey too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Right. Because you had this situation occur. And then was that when you really started embarking on entrepreneurship as well? Like when your health journey started, or was it later?
Oh no, that's a great question. It did go hand in hand because the thing that happens, which I think is so great about self-help and personal development, is when you start when you stop going to external things to feel better or to solve your problems, you have to look internally. And
Yeah.
I never did that before. And when I stopped going to food to feel better, I was exposed to this internal world, like all this stuff going on in my head, in my emotions, all this stuff that I had no idea had been running in the background for like all my life.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy when you're aware, like, okay, if you can't escape with food or if you can't avoid things with food, it's just like, okay, what's going on in my mind, in my body? And I had no awareness of that before. So when I did start having more awareness of that, it started actually feeling really uncomfortable because it revealed to me a lot of the insecurities and doubts I had in myself. And I hadn't like been super aware of it, but it would just get to the point where it got so uncomfortable that I just started Googling things online and I had a lot of self doubts. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to deal with this. So then I just found this podcast on self doubt by the Life Coach School. And that's what sort of started me on this journey on knowing about life coaching. And that was like a life changing moment.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool that it was like through a podcast too. That's not the first time that we've heard that on this show, actually. And that was actually one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to start a podcast, because I feel like free information is like the most important part of us starting on our journey. It kind of shows us that it's possible, like by hearing other people do it. So that's awesome that you experienced that and you like went for it and dove headfirst into finding solutions. I think so many people, and like speaking for myself as well, like prior to digging into my own emotions as well, like I didn't even think that there was solutions to the problem. It was like, this is just life. Like life is what it is, and we have to learn to accept it on some level, right? Like that was how
Right.
I was raised. So like that was literally the mindset that my family ancestrally was giving me. So it was like, oh no, there's this world of all of these badass women and men online, like making money and like actually super happy. Like they can have the life of freedom by also building a business, like all from their laptop. Like I didn't even think that that was a possibility. So I completely relate to you on that level. It's like, how do we even get this message out if we're not sharing it for free on some level? So like we can all start to relate, because I think we all have these beliefs somewhere, but it's difficult,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, to uncover them.
Right. Yeah, especially with trying to like first of all, I agree, like sharing free information, like it's very transformative. Like I was so thankful that the podcast I listened to that they put the information out there. It really like the content we put, like it really can transform someone's life. So like I said, like I was a nurse for 8 years. When I was a nurse, something that you said just now is like before I learned about personal development, it's just like you think the world is just as it is, right? So when I was a nurse, I just thought I was stressed and I thought I was stressed because of everyone around me. And I just like, I'm just stressed. So the solution to my stress is to change my job. So I was looking into other jobs like personal training. And then when I did my personal training job, that's when more of my insecurities were coming up, like about self doubt. And it was just so crazy to me because I was like, oh, I thought changing a job and doing something I liked would make me feel better. But then I realized, oh, I could still feel bad even in this other job. And then that was really kind of like crazy to me because I was like, oh my God, I thought the solution was I need to just change my job because my job is the thing making me feel miserable. But it really showed me for the first time in my life, like, oh no, like there's something else that's making me feel miserable. I'm like, oh my God, it's like my brain. And this kind
Yeah.
of like opened up my whole mind to this whole idea that, wow, what the heck? Like our brain is what is linked to our feelings about ourselves. And I never even heard about that sort of concept before. So that was crazy. And that sort of got me started like toward the life coaching route and then eventually like leaving nursing and going to entrepreneurship full time. But yeah, that kind of started just like, oh wow, it's not the job that makes me feel good.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that you said that because I don't think that we've ever unpacked this thought on the end in mind. Like, even just saying something like your job isn't making you miserable, like it's your brain. Like, it is
Mhm.
literally that simple, but because of society, whatever we want to call it, beliefs, piled on top of one another, like it actually just is the simplest thing that we just need to figure out what's going on up here, meaning like in our brain for our listeners that are just watching audibly, not visually. I'm like touching my head. But like, yeah, it's strange. Like you have been told again your whole life that it's the job, it's the circumstances, it's the situation, but then you realize it's like, oh, but if I change my situation and I change my circumstances, then I can actually even start to change my mindset, which I would say is really what you help your clients do. So how do you help them navigate? Like, at times, is it best for them to get a new job, and does that sometimes spark things for them or help them change, their thought processes? Or is it really just come down to those underlying beliefs before anything?
Like it depends. Like I help my clients on weight loss, and like sometimes, like if you could, like sometimes changing situations or circumstances, like sometimes it could be useful. Sometimes things are very focused on like the physical world, like the food you're eating and whatnot. But the thing that makes weight loss permanent is looking at your thoughts about food, looking at your relationship with food. And if you realize that, like you can eat all the healthy food you want, like you could do low carb or paleo or whatever, but you could still always overeat because of a reason in your mind. And so even if you change your diet or you work out a ton, even if you're doing those things but you're still not getting the results you want, there's probably that's when you have to look at what are your thoughts in the way, like what are you thinking about yourself, like why are you wanting to turn to food
Yeah.
even when you're not hungry.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting to hear you say that because I'm like trying to think about myself. Like, I know there's moments that I do this, like I just think everybody probably does on some level. But like you said, it's really like the mindset. Like, we don't have to do that. We don't have to lean towards food. Like, for me, it's always around my time of the month. Like, oh, yeah, I need some chocolate. Like, I've made it through the day, which I saw your post the other day. And I loved that you mentioned that. Like, stop rewarding yourself with chocolate, like reward yourself with something else. So can you tell us what your rewards are like now? Like, do you reward yourself with anything? What does that look like?
Right. That was really tricky for me for a long time. I mean, just for a long time, like this is the number one thing I hear from entrepreneurs, by the way, because I coach entrepreneurs, and the number one struggle they have with food is usually they tend to reward themselves at the end of the day with chocolate or wine or something. And it makes sense. We work so hard and it's nice to just relax. And a lot of us have learned that food is a source of reward. It's like a treat, and so part of like unlearning that is to help you see, like, first of all, that's a belief system that we've learned from somewhere along the road. Like it like we have to kind of look at, like, is it actually true that we need food to reward ourselves? And then you kind of look at, what are you wanting the food to do? It's like we're just wanting the food to feel relaxation, or like we want, like, what are you wanting from the food? It's like, what emotion are you wanting? It's like we're wanting relaxation, maybe we want to feel accomplished. And then I just think of other ways that can help to create that. And it could just be as simple as, bragging about yourself to your partner or your loved ones or your family, like sharing what you did to other people. I'm going to make a post about this, but there are like 5 ways I have in my mind, but it's basically like, yeah, sharing with other people what your success is, going somewhere, like walking somewhere that you feel relaxed, like you enjoy. Like I like going to the beach or just like outside or going to a nice park. And then also just something as simple as like moving your body, dancing, and just anything that you could think of that's like giving you joy that doesn't require food. Because the thing is, food isn't the only source. Like we could find joy in so many ways. And when you take food out as an option, your brain kind of expands and is able to find joy in so many different ways that you could think of.
Totally. Yeah. Like what I hear you saying, like, is what we talk about, like when we talk about like filling up our own cup,
Mhm.
like maybe just leaning more towards food would be like almost like I have a work addiction. So it's like very easy for me to get lost in work, like it's my
Mhm.
jam. Like I used to love it. That's how I felt successful, thriving, when like in reality I was totally burnt out. So I'm like relating to this on a different level, but it's making a lot of sense to me, like getting present, talking to people, walking, and just getting out of that like kind of hustle mentality. It's like a quick fix, when you're leaning towards things like that.
Right. Especially a lot of ambitious women, we associate achievement with worthiness and value. And so it makes sense. Like, I mean, I'm also a workaholic too. Like I and workaholic, like I mean, my mom has worked a lot. It's been kind of ingrained in me, like this conditioning that working hard, it means you're like this kind of person, like you're more worthy. So it's also a matter of recognizing that, like is that necessarily true that if we work that's associated with our sense of worthiness, like our value, which can be tricky because I know there's a lot of conditioning around that.
Yeah. No, that's such a great conversation, though. It's like we are so much more than just the work, even the podcast, the spillover effect, like impacting people. Of course, that's what we do. That's why we love it, like how you work with your clients. But yeah, it's so much more like, I think even just the personal journey that you've been able to describe to us today, it's like, that's really why we do this, like it's really about growth. So you can't really be, in my humble opinion, I don't know if you can be an entrepreneur if you're not willing to grow, right? Like they
Mm.
kind of go hand in hand, which absolutely comes down to like overcoming any of these beliefs, right? Because like the food is also just a belief. How you said it's really like just our brains. So yeah, it's good to hear people talking about food like this, talking about the mindset shift and how much you were basically able to like boil it down for us of what could actually be going on, when we're reaching for that candy bar or even just maybe like over consuming, which I thought was another really great point, which I don't always think about.
Right. It's so much easier said than done. Like, even if we know it's in our mind, the number one thing that entrepreneurs go to me with is like, I know that I shouldn't be overeating this, or I know I shouldn't be doing that. So why do I keep turning to food even though I don't need it? And the truth is partially too, a lot of it can even start with childhood. Like a lot of it is like how much we're learning about fulfilling our needs that weren't met when we were young. And it's just, it can be so deeply rooted even from back then. So it's kind of like, from a young age, if our caregivers haven't allowed us to express ourselves emotionally, or they haven't taught us how to soothe our emotions in a healthy way, we do look for external ways to do it. So ambitious women tend to look externally for a sense of approval or achievement. And so a big part of it is, if you don't want to turn to food for those reasons, it's like a big part of it is like learning how to validate yourself and just being proud of yourself, and how much, and acknowledging yourself rather than depending so much on things outside of you to feel better. So that's a big part of the work too. Yeah, not relying on the external things, which the external things are a lot easier though.
Yeah. Yeah. Like even when you talk about like talking or walking, like that's definitely external as well. I'm sure that's more like we were saying to get back into the present. But what does it look like when you work with a client and they're really having this like I'm currently on this self-love journey, right? Like it's really damn hard. Like
Yeah.
it's so hard like every
Oh my
day,
gosh.
you're like
Mhm.
dedicating time towards it. Honestly, on some level every minute, like let's be honest, it has to be like consistent like that. But I'd love to know like what have your clients or what have you seen in your own thoughts that have shifted so much, like a lot of us are coming with this, for lack of a better word, like negative baggage of just thought loops, that we sometimes can't get off of. I was on with a client this morning and she was just describing this to me, how she feels like she needs to purchase the next course. Like when you're talking
Mhm.
about ambition entrepreneurs, it's like, where can I find more things, to add to my bucket when I'm like, but the bucket's already full. So
Mhm.
Like, I would love to know what that looks like, because the external is so easy, like you said.
Right, right. And yeah, the internal work is way harder. It's like kudos to you for going on that self-love journey. I feel like I've been on that, but it's just ongoing. I feel like I don't know if I'll ever arrive any place. I just feel like there's always a new opportunity to love myself. I'm like, oh geez. But I feel like the biggest part of it is being able to have compassion, and
Mm.
compassion is not like people often, entrepreneurs always tell me like, oh, if I'm compassionate, then I'm just like never going to work anymore and I'm just going to be lazy for the rest of my life. But really what compassion is it's just being able to see, like, if you're judging yourself, if you're having negative self-talk, it's just being able to talk to yourself in a way that is accepting of your current situation, like just being accepting and present of how you're honestly feeling without trying to change it, just embracing the imperfection, just embracing what's going on right now in reality, like not trying to change it or fix it, just acknowledging, hey, I feel pretty terrible right now, like this feels horrible, and giving yourself that space to allow yourself to feel like that. And then when you acknowledge you're feeling that way, the compassion part helps to come in, because it's just like being able to experience suffering, but in a way that's not so hard, basically. So talking to yourself in a way, like, I guess the basic way of saying it is like talking to yourself as if like how you talk to a friend or a loved one or a pet. Like I have two cats, so how I talk to my cat. But yeah, talking to yourself in that way. So that's one piece of it. And then the next, like it's okay to feel like this. It's okay that you're human and that this happened. Like it doesn't mean anything's actually wrong with you. And then the next piece of that is curiosity. So just being curious without any judgment, just asking yourself like what happened, like to trigger this, and just trying to learn more about it without, yeah, being hard on yourself, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how you mentioned like the hard. I think that that's like the perfectionism side of most of us, but like a lot of people don't even identify as perfectionists, but we all tend to be on some level. So that's where that, like, at least in my sense, and like when speaking with my clients, it's like, oh, we haven't done something in a perfect way, or we made a mistake, right? Or we made a misstep, or someone just might be unhappy, right? But we're like taking that personally. A lot of our listeners tend to be highly sensitive as well. So it kind of goes hand in hand. Like we can be really hurt and then we tend to go down these thought loops. So it's great to hear you saying and walking us through the process of really just getting present, sitting with that emotion, and then just staying tender. And I love how you mentioned the curiosity part of it too, because I think so many healers and people that work on this completely eliminate that part of it. But getting curious with yourself is actually super fun. Like
Ah,
you get to
yeah.
learn so much about yourself you never knew.
Right, right. It is really just creating that relationship with yourself where you have more of a, like a partnership with yourself. Like you're not like you're willing to accept yourself as a human being, and you're being that person who's supportive of yourself. um we really have to learn in our brain. It's kind of like we're so good at being a critic, but it's like kind of learning about how to switch the voice to being more of an inner nurturer rather than an inner critic. And building that voice definitely takes time, but eventually that inner critic could be a lot more loving when you are consistent enough with it. But yeah, it could take a lot of practice.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, totally. Like, especially around the holidays and stuff, just for our listeners, we're like coming right off of Christmas and like New Year's break. When we're recording this, it's the third. So, like, anything that happens over the holidays can be like extremely triggering for us. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sensitive, just people in general, like, shit's a
Right.
lot. So, like, I'm sure
You're
if
just
you're not.
people.
Exactly. Like I'm like thinking about myself, like life hit me, over these past 2 weeks, but that tends to happen. And then it can throw us back into these habits. Like I was really on my journey, doing my mirror work, staying present. And maybe I fell off over the holidays, which I sure did because again, I'm human. Like I could have woke up this morning and been like, oh, we handled this situation badly because we didn't meditate or whatever. But it's really just more about getting back on that horse, how you said, and just like getting the consistency and leaning towards the nurturing side. I love that idea of like turning your inner critic to a nurturer. I think a lot of therapists talk about that, but they call it like parenting yourself, like
Mm-hmm.
parenting your inner child. But I like
Mm-hmm.
this idea of nurturing because the inner child piece is sometimes difficult to connect with when you're
Mm.
operating, like at a social level. Like you can't all of a sudden just be like, inner me, I'm so sorry, like drop back down. So I like that idea of like staying like on the same plane, but just having that nurturing sense rather than having to go all the way back, to your childhood, like in an instant and kind of pick up on that right away.
Right, right. You don't always have to go there. Sometimes it could be healing to do that, but yeah, sometimes if you're just sort of in the present moment, like you don't need to. But I feel like that's what will help you, especially be more resilient. Because
Mm.
what would happen with my weight loss clients is if they messed up like on how they ate, like if they overate or ate too many cookies or chocolate one day, the person who succeeds is the person who's able to look at what happened and nurture themselves, like talk to themselves in a nurturing way, and then learn from it and then move on. But the person who isn't really able to lose weight successfully is the one who dwells in there, who stays in the thought loops, who just keeps personalizing it. And your ability to talk to to nurture yourself, because I thought this for a long time, it's not a sign of weakness, but it's actually a sign of resilience, and it's able to help you get stronger. But I had to do a lot of work on that of like, oh, compassion is weakness. Compassion is like, it's for and it's indulgent. It's for people who, you know, care about their feelings too much. I had so much judgment about it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
Oh, we can all relate to that too because like we're the sensitives. So like we totally get it. It's like your whole life you've been told that you shouldn't feel that way or like,
Mm-hmm.
and then we all just start to believe it. So we take on that belief. Then we tell others that. And it's like we don't even believe that, like where did
Right.
this thought even come from? But we as society have totally created that. It's like compassion is weakness, 100%.
Right. Right. I'm glad I'm not the only one who's like going through that. I'm like, oh
Oh,
gosh. But yeah, I'm very emotional. Like that's part of why I was an emotional eater, because it's like when you have a lot of emotion and energy, like I would just turn to food because I'm like, oh, I have so much emotion. How can I just turn this off like right now? I'm a very like high energy emotional person. It's so funny because my husband's like the exact opposite of me. He's very like calm and like he's very soothing. He's literally like the perfect balance for me.
I love that. You need that, like we need a yin to our yang.
Right, exactly.
Like I am the same way. I am crazy. Like I'm flying off the handles at all times. And my
Right.
boyfriend's like, bring it in. He's like, we've got it. We're okay. Like ground me.
Oh
So
my
we're
God.
the same way, and like a lot of our listeners feel the same way too. It's like we're operating at this very high vibrational level. And on some level, people would debate like you have to have that to be an entrepreneur. I completely
Mm.
disagree, I think at all levels it can be successful. But of course it's helpful when we can stay in that energy but still be nurturing, like I think that's really where the good stuff is when you can still operate on that high level and, bring in this calm side.
Right. It is actually just non-negotiable for me because I just learned if I'm always operating on that high energy side, like I will just crash, like I will burn out. Like that's why I was stress eating as a nurse. I was just always go, go, go. I never took breaks. It was my badge of honor to not take breaks and blah, blah. And but when I did that, it felt horrible. Like even people who are high energy also need to recover. And so having some space and time for yourself to nurture yourself and to have self-care and to kind of give your brain a break, it's really like necessary to operate as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I completely agree. And even in some level, like what I'm experiencing for myself is like operate in society. Like if I don't take care of myself, I very quickly end up showing up in relationships, whether that be like me meeting someone at the grocery store or like talking with my mom on the phone, like relationships on all level. I'm not present. So I'm
Mm,
not catering to that relationship the way I want to, or maybe I'm saying something that like I didn't mean, So yeah, I think for me it was the same way. Like I knew that I couldn't continue at the level that I was. Like our listeners also know this, but I also had like high blood pressure,
mm,
like similar to your blood and what we were talking about too. It's so interesting that it's kind of like falling in alignment like that, but literally mind blown. But it was like I was so sick and I knew I was just going to get sicker. So I had to make like health decisions based off of my meditation and like really staying present because I was with my PTSD, like living outside of my body. So that's why I think a
mm.
lot of the blood pressure was so high too, you know?
Right. Right. That sounds like so much that you went through. I mean, that's amazing. Like how much growth you've had. I mean, I just working with clients who had trauma, like I know that that's like hard.
Yeah, I'm so lucky. Like, that's why I love what you're doing. Like, we cannot do this alone. Like, I think it's so important that we have coaches, support, like, even in my household, like my boyfriend's so supportive, and then I have my little puppy Bailey, like how you have your kittens and your cats. Like, it's so important to just have beings around you that like believe in you and see you, for who you are, like as you're on this journey. And I think, for all of our listeners, I always say this too, like anytime you can have a coach, you should absolutely get one. If you can afford it, it's worth every single penny. Like without my coaches, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today, like even with my business, because it really just impacts everything.
Right. Right. Because even I see this all the time in coaching, because even if you know all the tools, even if you know about mindset, sometimes you could be so in your head that you just, it could be really hard to get out of it. And honestly, when you're in that space, it could lead to like mental issues. Like it could lead to psychiatric issues down the road that could be diagnosed, like depression or anxiety. Like if it's not attended to, it could lead to that. And having a coach is really helpful because sometimes when you want to just stay in like a negative thought spiral or you just want to stay in that, like it could be so hard to get your own self out of that.
Yeah.
Really hard. I call it the vortex of doom, but yeah, it can be really hard sometimes.
I'm writing that down. I love that. Vortex.
Yeah.
That
You're
is
just like, oh, I'm in the vortex of doom. Yeah.
yeah, because you're like, and I think it's also, which I would love to know your opinion on this. And then I know we're like coming up to wrapping up, but like I was just having this conversation with a client earlier too. The more you know about healing and like the more you become awakened, we might say enlightened, however you want to define it, like the more knowledge you have, at times, I think getting off of that track is like even more difficult because you start to align like, oh, like how I said earlier, like I didn't meditate, I didn't do my breath work. And it can become, especially as perfectionists, this place of shame and guilt, like within the healing, which is really
Mm-hmm.
not what we want. So I'd love to know, like, if you've ever experienced that. I know for me, I absolutely have. And like, if you have any advice about how to combat that, when you're on your journey.
Oh yeah. I mean, like, yeah, I've gone through this a lot myself. I think especially as like when you're aware of what's going on in your mind, I feel like we tend to use that against us. We're kind of just like, oh, well, I knew like I had this awareness, but I still didn't do something. So therefore something's wrong with me. Because sometimes having that heightened awareness, it could be like a double-edged sword. It's like, oh dang, okay, I know that I had this thought and like sometimes if you choose not to do anything about it, then it could feel kind of like guilty, like, oh, okay, well, look at you, you're just not gonna do nothing about it, so
Yeah,
it
totally.
could be hard. So it's really like a matter of being able to zoom out a bit and just being able to, like, going back to still accepting, like, you're human, like, at the end of the day, no matter how woke you are or
Yeah.
how enlightened you are, like, at the end of the day, we still can have human tendencies, and we could sort of relieve some pressure off and just accept that no, there really is no such thing as perfection. Like, there really is no perfect being who never takes days off, or who never I don't know, who never has failures or things like that.
Yeah.
And the more accepting you are that you're just, you're human and you have imperfections, I think it just helps to release some shame around that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, that's really like the cusp of, or like the siphon, right? Of like all of these emotions kind of dribbling down. It kind of leads to this like shame, guilty feeling, which can, I'm sure, like spark those thought loops. One thing that I heard, which I thought was a great analogy, was like when animals fight, or like when they have disruption in their day, they don't like shut their emotions down. They might still like freak out or like fight, right? And then right after, you'll see them do this like physical shake. And I never thought about this
Mm.
before, but like my puppy does it all the time. She like physically shakes it off, right? And I
Oh.
was like, that's so interesting. Like, if we would still physically shake it off, like how you talked about the dancing, or even like mentally, like just give ourselves a shake, like it's okay. Just shake it off. It's not a big deal. I just think that that would be like such more productive way. But it's like now we're going back to like animal instincts. So we kind of need to know like all of these pieces. It can be so complicated.
Right. Right. But I like what you said, though. It's true, though. Like, your physiology does impact your thoughts. And something that is really helpful, which I learned from Tony Robbins and other coaches, is really like, if you, even just your posture, if you have a slouched posture and you just kind of sitting up could help you feel better really instantly. Or because it's kind of like your thoughts are triggered when just from your own body's movement. So even just moving and doing something different in a time that normally maybe you're depressed or you're not feeling good, just like moving and shaking that energy, or just sitting upright, like, can help cue your brain of like, oh, we're okay, we're not in a depressed state,
Yeah.
we're like all right right now.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah, just like physically pulling yourself out of it, or like smiling sometimes helps. Like, there are ways that we can pull on this. Like, if you're not able to get out for a walk, or if you're not able to talk to somebody, how can you use these small little tools? So I love that. Thank you so much for your time. And can you tell us what you offer and how our listeners can get in touch with you?
So I basically help any women entrepreneur who wants to feel in control around sugar cravings and wants to lose weight permanently, especially women who are really successful at what they do, but for some reason the food is just that one thing that's nagging in the way and they don't know why. I offer a free impulse mastery strategy session just to help us walk through, like, what's in your way, maybe what are the mindset blocks that are keeping you stuck, and how to overcome them. And then also just a free guide to impulse mastery, like just sort of a quick start guide of learning how to feel in control around sugar. You could also download that for free if you want to learn how to start managing your cravings right now.
Yay. I love it. Yeah. And all the links will be in the bio and the show notes below. So if you guys are multitasking, screenshot that, come hang out with us on Instagram. You guys can check out our handles below. We will be there if you have any questions as well. I hope that that's okay. If any listeners DM you, if anything comes up, I'm sure they will, because I know a lot of us can relate to this. So, yeah, is there anything else you want to leave us with for today?
just just I think learning how to be in your body and accept yourself in your current situation, like just being in acceptance, is the quickest way to get out of shame. Just kind of like, oh, let me just be where I am, like, let me just accept what's going on now, and then asking yourself what's the next best decision to move forward can help you not stay stuck somewhere.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I hope you guys are taking notes. If not, then go back and re-listen to this episode because it was very juicy. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was so much fun. I appreciate it.
So fun. Thank you so much for listening to The End in Mind. I would like to remind you all, if you haven't yet reached out to me on Instagram, we are at Meraki_media_management. It will be in our show notes as well. If you would like to reach out to me, we always offer free coaching through Instagram based around our Instagram training and our business Instagram practices. If you need any type of support, please do not hesitate to reach out to me there. And we also offer several different types of consulting and training packages if you're looking for a little bit more in-depth tips. So thank you all for listening in, and of course, I want you all to keep the end in mind as you continue with your day and or work week. Have a great week, and I will see you all next time.